It was a typical afternoon in a quiet suburban neighborhood when the phone call came through, a phone call that no one could have predicted. It was only the sound of a child's voice on the other end of the line, but the dispatcher could sense immediately that something was wrong. The line crackled, and through the static, a small, trembling voice broke through. I need help. My mommy, she sleeps all day. I don't know what's happening. She's not waking up," the little girl whispered urgently, her words shaking with fear. The dispatcher froze for a split second, trying to process what she was hearing. A child, no older than 6, calling in a panic, asking for help because her mother, whom she was supposed to be relying on for safety and comfort, was unresponsive, lying in bed all day. Something wasn't right. There was something in the little girl's voice that told the dispatcher this wasn't just a case of a mother taking a nap. The clock was ticking. Time was running out. Every second counted as the dispatcher urgently gathered the little girl's details: her name, her address, her mother's condition. The moment they hung up, police were dispatched, but the call still haunted the dispatcher's mind. What was happening in that house? Why wouldn't the mother wake up? Was she sick, or was there something more sinister lurking underneath? As the police officers raced toward the address, the dispatcher remained on standby, hoping that the situation wasn't as dire as it seemed. But there was an unsettling feeling in her gut, the kind that you can't shake, no matter how hard you try. The child's voice kept echoing in her mind. "Mom sleeps all day." Minutes later, the first responders arrived at the address. They approached the house cautiously, unsure of what they were about to find. The little girl's words echoed in their minds as they rang the doorbell and waited. A tense silence hung in the air. The door opened just a crack, and the child's wide eyes peered out. The officer leaned in, gently asking if she was okay, if she was alone. With trembling hands, the girl nodded and stepped aside, allowing them into the house. What greeted them was both confusing and deeply unsettling. The house was silent. The smell in the air was musty, as if it had been days since any windows had been opened. The house, once full of the warmth of a family, now felt suffocatingly cold, every inch of it coated in an eerie stillness. The little girl led them into the living room, where her mother lay on the couch. At first glance, it appeared as if she was just sleeping, curled up, still and motionless, but the officers could sense something wasn't right. The room had a strange heaviness, and the silence was deafening. As they approached the woman, the truth began to set in. The mother wasn't just sleeping, she was unresponsive, cold to the touch. A quick scan of her body revealed no obvious injuries, but something was terribly wrong. She wasn't breathing. She wasn't moving. The mother, whose presence was supposed to be a source of safety for her child, had somehow slipped into a state of unconsciousness so deep that even the frantic cries of her daughter had failed to rouse her. "Is she dead?" one of the officers whispered, his voice barely audible. The answer was clear. There was something horrifyingly unnatural about the situation. They rushed to check for any signs of life, but it was too late. The woman had been unresponsive for far too long. The little girl, standing quietly by, watched the officers with wide eyes, clutching a stuffed animal to her chest. Her innocence was striking, but her mind was racing with confusion and fear. Why wouldn't her mommy wake up? Why was everything so quiet? The officers quickly assessed the scene. There were no immediate signs of foul play, no obvious injuries or signs of struggle, and yet, the atmosphere in the room felt wrong. What had caused this woman to fall into such a deep, unshakable slumber? And why had her daughter been left alone, clearly frightened and seeking help? It didn't take long for the officers to realize the gravity of the situation. They needed to act fast. This wasn't a typical medical emergency, nor was it a case of simple neglect. The little girl's words rang in their ears. "Mom sleeps all day." And in that moment, everything shifted. The officers realized this wasn't just an emergency. This was a mystery, a dangerous mystery, and they needed answers before it was too late. The officers immediately sprang into action, their instincts telling them that time was of the essence. With one officer kneeling next to the unresponsive mother, trying to assess her condition, the other officers began to search the house for any signs that could help explain what had happened. The little girl, still clutching her stuffed animal, stood quietly off to the side, her large eyes darting between the officers, unsure of what was going to happen next. The tension in the air was palpable. One officer, his hand gently resting on the woman's arm, whispered to his partner, "Check the kitchen, check the medicine cabinet, see if anything seems out of place." The other officer nodded and quickly moved to search the kitchen. As he rifled through drawers and cabinets, his eyes fell on a bottle of prescription pills. His heart skipped a beat as he saw the label, prescription medication for the woman. But something felt off. He pulled out the bottle and shook it lightly. There were only a few pills left inside, far fewer than there should have been. At that moment, the officer's heart sank as a horrifying thought crossed his mind. Could it be that the mother had overdosed on her medication? Was that the reason she had been unable to wake up? The officer quickly grabbed the bottle and hurried back to the living room, holding it out to his partner. "We need to get her to a hospital. Now," the officer said urgently, his voice trembling. Meanwhile, the officer with the mother checked her pulse again, his brow furrowing as he realized that she was not responding. With great urgency, they placed the woman onto a stretcher and began administering emergency care. The other officer took the little girl by the hand, leading her into the hallway. "Sweetheart, we're going to help your mommy. Everything's going to be okay," he said in a soothing tone, trying to reassure the girl, though his own heart was racing. The girl looked up at him with a mixture of confusion and trust, her big brown eyes wide as she clutched her stuffed animal even tighter. "But why does she sleep all day? She never wakes up," she whispered, her voice trembling. The officer crouched down to her level, kneeling so he could look her in the eyes. "We're going to find out why, but we need to make sure you're safe. Can you come with me for a minute while we help your mommy?" The little girl nodded, and the officer gently guided her into the kitchen. As the paramedics worked frantically on her mother, the officer took a moment to sit the girl down at the kitchen table. "Do you know if your mommy has been sick lately?" the officer asked softly, his voice full of concern. The girl shook her head. "No, she sleeps all day, every day. She used to talk to me, but not anymore." The officer's mind raced. There had to be more to this than just a mother sleeping. Why would she be so unresponsive? The medication could have played a role, but the officer felt that there was something deeper behind it, something they weren't seeing just yet. As the paramedics carefully transported the woman out of the house, the officer turned back to the little girl, who had her head hung low. "Can you tell me if anyone else has been coming around? Any strange people?" The girl's eyes flickered, as if she was trying to recall something, and then her face brightened with sudden clarity. "I saw a man last week. He came and talked to Mommy. I don't know him. He said he was here to help." The officer's stomach turned. A man? Was it possible that someone had been visiting the woman, offering help? Or was this something far more sinister? The officer quickly radioed for backup. "We need to search for any other signs of foul play. There may be a person involved that we haven't found yet." As the scene unfolded, they discovered the chilling truth. The woman had indeed been given an overdose of her medication, but it wasn't an accident. The man who had visited her was a fraud, someone who had taken advantage of the woman's condition to manipulate her into taking the pills. They discovered that the man had been siphoning off the woman's savings, convincing her that the medication was needed to help her sleep. The case turned into something much darker. The woman had been manipulated, controlled, and left to suffer. All the while her little girl had been the silent witness. too young to fully understand the gravity of the situation. The investigation quickly uncovered the man's involvement, and he was arrested shortly thereafter. But for the little girl, who had been so brave, this experience would stay with her forever. As the days passed, the little girl stayed with relatives, surrounded by love and care, while her mother slowly recovered in the hospital. The little girl had unknowingly saved her mother's life by dialing 911, showing just how much bravery she had at such a young age. The trauma of that day would take time to heal, but it would also make